Welcome to the second chapter of my ActionRPG project in Unity. And this chapter focuses on player attacks. In the first chapter, we got the world working. We were able to transition between zones. But now we want to start setting up the ability for the player to start attacking so we can start making some enemies so the player can defeat them. This first video is going to focus on setting up a basic melee attack animation from those sword slashes, and then beginning to set up the player's animation for that. We're not actually going to get to any of the coding in this video. We're just going to set up the animations, the prefab for the sword slash, and then we're going to work on coding it later. So first off, you need to make sure that inside of your player sprites that you have actually renamed your attack animation ones. I mentioned doing that in the video when we first loaded this up back in 1.4, but now I'm going to be actually using those. So you can see that these two frames have been named player attack down 1, and then right 1, left 1, and up 1. Then I've also done the ranged attack ones that I've named. We're going to be using that for the ranged attack, which is probably going to be maybe the third video in this chapter. So make sure you've renamed those because it's going to be a lot easier than just trying to use some random number. It's going to be a lot easier if we can actually see the names of those. So let's start with the quicker task, which is to give the player a attack animation. So that's going to involve us loading up the player, and by just clicking on the player, we couldn't do it on the prefab. It really doesn't matter where we end up setting this up. So like you can even double click the prefab to work on it here. But we need the animation window. So if you've closed it, it's under Window, Animation, and it's the top one called Animation. Remember that Animator is the one that connects all of them together, and we're going to need that as well. But I want Animation. And I'm going to pull it out of there because I kind of need to, I just like to have it out. So you'll see that if we have the player selected, it actually loads up the player's animations already because it knows that this object has the following animations. And as we've seen before, we can always preview them by just selecting them here, hitting the play button, and it's going to make our object actually play that animation. So it'll give us a chance to see what they're going to do. But let's add a few new ones. And judging from the naming convention, you can probably predict what we're going to call these. Player underscore attack underscore down. And that's just so that it alphabetizes them so that the action comes before the direction. So it makes it easier for us to find it in this list. So we're going to create a new clip, and it's going to want to save it. I'm going to go to my animations player folder and give it the name that I have been doing. Player attack down. Then hit save. And now let's set this up. So I do actually want to keep it at the same frame rate as the rest of my player ones have been. And those have been 8. An argument could be made for maybe just rescaling this samples to always be on a 60 frames per second basis. But for this project, it's fine if we just manipulate the speed of the animation by changing the samples. So this means that this chart from 0 to 1 takes 1 second. There's 8 opportunities for frames here. And then really, even if we did from 60, it's still the same thing. It's just it gives you more opportunities to insert frames. So really it doesn't affect how it animates, but if you have a 60 frame per second, you could be switching frames more often. This from here to here still represents 1 second. It's just easier for us to deal with 8. Alright, so we need to start setting this up. This is the down attack animation, so I'm going to bring in the player attack down. And I want to have the player's attack switch frames at the 2 mark here. And so I'm bringing in attacked down 2 there. So essentially what I'm kind of constructing out of this is the player's attack lasts almost about half a second. And I'm going to right click on this bar here because the other thing to notice is it gives you one extra tick after the frame before it considers the animation to be over. But I want this down part, so you can see how he's going so quick through that. The second frame is only lasting for like a fraction of the time that the first frame, and I want that to hang around a little bit longer. So I can do two things. I can take and drag another copy of player down to serve as a keyframe here to bump it up, so that now you can see that they have equal time in the animation. Alternatively, if I don't want to use that keyframe, I can right-click up here and go to Add an Animation Event. Unfortunately, I guess it may not let us until we actually... It's not expanding that. So let's add that keyframe. I don't have the specific animation... Oh. If I drag it out, it adds it. So I don't have the functions coded yet. And we are going to explore that, but what's kind of neat about the ability to use these animation events is it lets me call code inside of the player script by an animation. So the animation can determine when to make something happen. So I'm going to use this when the animation is done to send the message to the player that we're done attacking, and we can leave the attacking state inside of the player. Because we're going to have the player essentially stop moving when they're attacking. And so we can let the animation inform the player when the player's done attacking. Additionally, we're going to spawn the attack hitbox at this frame. So like the player will reel back first, and obviously from the looks of this frame, the player hasn't attacked yet. The player's readying their sword, and then the sword's going to come out on this frame. And we're going to also use an animation event to do that. And we can even add it right now. So I've added that animation event here. I don't have the functions yet, but this is going to be the frame where we pop out the attack hitbox. So I actually have two animation events. I have one here at the marker 2, and I have one at marker 4. Really powerful tool, and I'm going to talk about more of the restrictions of that when we get to the second video for coding it. Alright, let's go and make the rest of these clips exactly the same as this. Player attack up. I'm going to drop it down to 8 frames per second. Bringing in, oops, that is the wrong frame. We want player attack up, then player attack up at the 2 mark. I'm going to add an animation event at the 2 mark and an animation event at the 4 mark. And so we've got that. And then we add the left and right ones. Player attack left. And you're free to change these speeds. If you feel like the animation is either too fast or too slow or doesn't look right, you don't have to use the numbers I'm using. So you're kind of free to, if you think that isn't going to look good, change, maybe make the last frame a little bit longer then. It's totally up to you. Okay. Then we got to do player attack right. I think that if you are going to change them, just be consistent so that some of the animations aren't faster than the other animations. That will probably break a lot of things that would be very difficult to debug. All right, so we've got all of our attack animations. So right now, we're actually done with the player as a prefab. Oh, actually, we need to continue to, we need to set it up inside the animator. So we'll put this back here, and I'm going to take a look at the animator for the player. So I'm actually, I've pulled open the sprite again. I double clicked on the prefab, and I'm inside of the animator for the player now. And you can see that since we've added these new animations, it gave us 4 new animation states inside of my animator. But I still want to use a blend tree for this. And so I am going to delete these. We could probably just copy an existing blend tree to save ourselves some trouble, but I'll make one from scratch just so we can go through that process again. Right click, create state from new blend tree. I'm going to rename this from blend tree to blend tree attack. And then I'm going to double click it, and we're going to start setting these properties up. So blend tree, if we click on this, we want to switch it to be a two-dimensional simple direction blend tree, and the parameters will be horizontal and then vertical. And the motions, we need to add 4 motions. So we're going to add a new motion field, new motion field, new motion field, and another new motion field. Expand out the folder you've been saving the animations in. So my animations player folder. And now I've just got to figure out where I want to put these. I guess I'm a little bit curious where I put them last time. It looks like I did down, up, right, left. Well, it's kind of nonsensical, but I'll be consistent. So we're going to do down, up, right, and left. There's really no reason for me to keep these in the same order, just consistency. Anyway, so if you're attacking down, that means your Y position is -1. If you're attacking up, that means your Y position is +1. If you're attacking to the right, that means X is +1. And if you're attacking to the left, that means X is -1. And so now we've got my blend tree set up. There is a caution I do want to point out, and I'm going to point it out again when we code this. The blend tree does have a side effect of triggering more than one animation event. If you recall, when we were playing with the animations for the player, we added these events that we're going to use to spawn the melee hitbox, and we're going to end the attacking state. Well, in a blend tree, technically it's actually accessing 2 animations simultaneously, and so it will actually fire the those events more than once. So we're going to have to be cautious about that when we get to coding. All right, now let's link the attack tree. I moved it up towards the top because it's going to come out of the any state. So let's right-click any state and make a transition into the blend tree attack. This here, let's open this up. The settings that we want to do for this, for our transition, it does not have an exit time, and that's because it should happen instantly. The transition should have a fixed duration of 0, meaning we should immediately transition to the attack when we tell the game that we're attacking. And lastly, this one's an odd one, but can you transition to self? I suppose. If you play the attack animation multiple times, maybe the player just like keeps on reeling their sword back and never attacks. Hopefully that won't come up though. And then conditions, we want to activate on the trigger, the attack trigger. So then this will happen, and we want it to just leave the state. So we right-click on this and do to make transition, and now we're going to bring it back to the walk state. Oh no, we'll bring it to the idle state, because the idle state is going to send the player to walk if the speed is higher than 0. So when we're done attacking, let's dump the player back into idle, and then from there it can move where it needs to. So this exit here, this one does need to have an exit time. Exit time refers to the fact that you're going to be leaving the animation at a specific time. This is a reference to exit time. This is a percentage of the current animation. So if I say 1, that means it will finish the entire animation and then exit. And then the transition duration, you could go 0 for that, so it'll immediately jump to the new animation. You can also do kind of like a hybrid of that and go 0.75 on exit time and a transition of 0.25, and then it transitions into idle very similarly. But I want 0, transition, and 1. If that looks weird, we'll do the other one. And there is no condition on this because we leave when the animation has finished 100% of its animation. So that's what that exit time is going to do. All right, so we've got our triggers set up, and I think that might be a good stopping point just to keep this video in a manageable size. So we're going to do another video. It's probably going to be really short about setting up the player's sword attack. So right now, all we did was set up the animations for the player so that we can actually start attacking when we get to that, which will probably be the third video now. So we're gonna end here, and I will see you for the next video where we build the prefab for the player's sword slash. So thank you for watching.